Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode, the February 2024 issue of Flight Training the Way I See It, a video podcast and podcast for flight training news and opinion. We're based here in Miami Beach, Florida at CFI Bootcamp, and my name is Mike Shiflett, and I'm your host today. And I've got some news for you, something that didn't make it into the newsletter, so we're going to cover that. We're also going to cover creating a mentor culture in any flight school. This has been an issue over the years. I want to talk a little bit about that and how we can create that within a flight school. That's really needed. Also want to let you know that our Power Hour is now over 172 webinar episodes. So Cessna 172, right? A little over 3 years of mostly every Saturday from noon to 1 doing the Power Hours. Now these Power Hours are 1 hour topics, and they explore everything from marketing to deep dives into maneuvers, anything aviation related, flying in Europe, flying in Spain, all kinds of things. Anything you can imagine, we're covering it. Okay, crossing the North Atlantic in an airplane, we're talking about basic flight training, telling how to be a better instructor, how to get into somebody's mind as a CFI. All that stuff is covered in our Power Hours. And so to join that or to attend one of those, they're only live, so you can only get them live. That's noon to 1 Eastern time. And the way you could do it is you go to our website, cfibootcamp.com. There's a bar at the top, green bar. And if you click that, you'll be able to opt in. Okay, let's talk about that a little bit. And also, if you don't get our newsletter, you can opt in there on the website as well and get a PDF of this video podcast, and it's also in newsletter form. Okay, moving on. Next Power Hours are going to be very interesting, so hopefully you'll get this before the Power Hour comes out. The AOPA legal team, Jeremy Brown, is going to talk on our next Power Hours guest speaker about the pilot protection services and things that you might want to know about that. And also, we'll have an open forum Q&A so we can ask questions. That'll be nice. And then that's on the 2nd of March. I don't know if next week after that, the 9th, it's going to be the good, bad, and the ugly memorable students. Now, we had a really good Power Hour last week. It was a panel discussion, and I had 4 people on. It was the 10 things I learned as being a flight instructor, and these people have a lot of experience. So Greg Brown's one of them. He wrote the Savvy Flight Instructor. He also wrote the Turbine Pilot's Flight Manual, available through ASA, among other things. And he lives in Flagstaff, Arizona, and he's an instructor, been an instructor a very long time, has very good insights. And one of the articles here that we're going to talk about is just a little bit about what he said. We also had Dorothy Schick. She's based in Oregon, around Eugene area, and she's been an instructor a long time. She runs the CFI Facebook study group. So CFI study group it's a Facebook group. So join that. That's a really good place to have safe space to ask questions if you're a CFI in training, or if you're a mentor CFI. I'm sure everybody would be happy to have you there. So there's that. Next thing I want to talk about is Redbird migration, which is coming up on the 5th and 6th in Houston. And I'm planning on being there and talking on the 6th. And I've got another thing to talk about, which is the new product we're working on, which is the CFI SmartStudy Pro. I want to tell you what that is. And then we'll go through 3 CFI Pro tips at the end, which we always do. And these pro tips are related to flight instructors this time. So very flight instructor centric, okay? So let's get into the meat of the matter, shall we? Let's talk about what I learned here from FASANA. That's the Flight School Association of North America. They sent out a few newsletters during the conference, which I didn't get to go to this year. It was in Las Vegas. It was this last week of February. And there was some things that happened there, which I wanted to bring your attention to. So Everett Rochon, he runs the aviation commercial and the certification branch of the FAA, right? So he was there and he was speaking. And so that's really good. He's a really good person for our industry. And he dropped a little hint. So I wanted to let you all know that he's talking about when the ACSs release later this year. You've been waiting for this for how long? We've been waiting for this for years, right? Well, I think our wait is coming to an end. So that means that the last of the ACSs will be released, and that's going to include aviation instructor. And so it will include all of them. So, the ones that are ready, which I believe are all of them at the moment. I know the aviation instructor was ready. So if you're thinking about taking a CFI course test or whatever, and you don't want to be subject to the new ACS, then you need to get busy. All right, like now, because my guess is, this is just a guess, but usually the FAA releases things like that in June of each year. The ACSs, PTSs traditionally have been done in June. And also there's a new handbook, not a new one, but an update. The Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge should also be ready in June. So there's some updates for you. There's also, on this DP availability, they're beginning to align all the stuff now in Oklahoma City. And so, that's going on well as we can expect. And they gave some numbers, which I'll get here by the next podcast, of how many new DPEs they're putting on, the class sizes in Oklahoma City, so on and so forth, and maybe even where. So we've got that. So that's something good to think about. Also, there's a new document that came out as a notice, an FAA notice about the 8900 order, 8900.675, which addresses the FSDOs. And it says that, for self-examining authority within a 141 school is possible. There's some criteria for it, right? But the FAA is saying, the FSDO is saying, we don't want to do that because it adds too much burden to us. Too much. We don't have the manpower to oversee it. We don't have this, we don't have that. Well, they wrote a memo, basically to all the FSDOs and said, the reason that you didn't have time for it is because you had to do 50% of the students who are graduating from a particular course, you as inspectors had to do. And then the others could be done by a DPE. And then once that's satisfied, then you could allow examining authority. Well, they said there's nothing in the regulation that talks about 50%, so let's just get rid of it. So you can do as many or as few as you want and let the DPs do the rest. And if that's satisfactory, give them examining authority. So it takes the burden off the FSDOs a lot. And so we're likely to see more applications for that and more actually things happening in that way. So I'm happy about that because that will relieve a lot of workload for DPEs as well. So we got that to look forward to this year. Okay, so moving on, let's cruise on with what I was going to tell you about, which is creating a mentor culture in any flight school. So if you haven't noticed, we have a lot of younger flight instructors. And let me tell you something that's interesting. The day before they took anybody takes a practical test, you didn't have a green card that said flight instructor on it, right? You didn't have one. And so you couldn't do a lot. You could do certain things, but you couldn't do any flight instructor-centric stuff. The very next day, the very day you took your flight test, you got a temporary, which authorized you to do that. But can I tell you something? You don't know any more than you knew the day before that you didn't have it. You're the same person, right? Because you can buy as much training as you want, but you cannot buy experience, right? Cannot buy that. That comes as a gift from having done this for a long time. So then you get that. So, but the issue is we have most of the training going on, most of it is being done by CFIs who have less than 2 years, and in most cases, less than 1 year of training of experience. And most of those people have between 10 and 20 hours of solo time, not more than that. So this is an issue, right? So what we really need is a mentoring program. But the problem with that word and the problem with the whole thing is it seems like I have this new card, the green card that says flight instructor that I worked so hard for, and now all of a sudden I'm less than. I can't just do my job. I've got to have this mentor thing. That means I don't have enough experience. So everybody's going to ask me when I teach them how to fly. I'm going to say, well, I have a mentor. That doesn't sound like, doesn't have a good ring to it to me, right? I'd like to have a better name for that, but we need this in a really, really bad way. And the good news is there's enough senior CFIs out there within SAFE, the CFI study group, within NAFI, to provide this as a service. So I was talking about this, and I was saying the problem with CFIs who are in academies, which is a lot of CFIs, they're not going to stay teachers. That's not their thing, right? They're not going to stay as a flight school instructor forever. They're going to go on to Endeavor or whoever hires them first, right? That's what they're going to do. So they have no interest in continuing education unless it somehow makes them look better on a resume. If it stands them apart from the crowd, then they'll do it. But if it doesn't, then they're not going to do it. There's no whiffum. What's in it for me? Right? That's a John King thing. There's no whiffum. What's in it for me? Right. So, because, obviously the people who come before you and put through students, none of them are all falling out of the skies, right? But we do have a lot of training accidents. So the number one accident cause is loss of control, and that's by GA pilots. The second one is accidents in flight training. That's the second leading cause of accidents in our industry. Okay, so we do need this program. We also need, if you can look at some posts. Now, at Facebook, the CFI study group, we don't judge. So, but there was a post in there. There's several of them in there where I don't comment on those because, like I say, it's a safe place. I don't want to make it an unsafe space. But there are places in there where the person was asking about something that he couldn't explain to us, she couldn't explain to a student. And it was a very basic thing. I mean, it was so kind of elementary, you just wonder. And then there was no, like, even the question itself was like, it's like, there's a resource for that. The resource, you can get it. It's a handbook or a guide. And I don't want to say what this thing is because I don't want to make it unsafe for anybody, right? But basically, you could just go find it in, I don't know, a minute if you have the resource. But anyway, this person was just asking, what it is. And you're like, why are you teaching someone to fly when you don't have this knowledge is what comes to my mind. But of course, it's not a fair thing because it could be very strong and I don't know that. So I just don't comment on those things. If that happens, I'll just leave it or let someone else say, but we're trying to be nice about them. And some people nudged him in the right way. And that's fine. So that's all what it's for. So I'm happy about that. But I'm just saying that had that person had a mentor, they could have just worked with their mentor person. They would have just told them and helped them and say, why did you know this? And then be able to offer them, like, here's some resources you might want to have in your collection here. Let me help you with that. Those kind of things, right? I think those are really important. But like I said, the problem with it is the buy-in, right? It's the problem. So what we need to do is listen to what Greg Brown said. Greg Brown is a great flight instructor from Flagstaff, Arizona, and he had some really, really good suggestions. He said, do this. Flight schools have a weekly meeting. And the weekly meeting is not about bashing anybody. It's about, let's talk about everybody's students and how they're doing. That's the idea. This is basically a mentoring program in disguise. So it's a place where all the CFIs show up and they feel like, okay, we're all here. It's fun. We might as well talk about it. What's our problems and issues? And then there are senior CFIs and other people there who they can bounce ideas off and talk to and get the information they need. And I think that's a brilliant idea. And I want to see that perpetuate across the business because I said the only way we're going to get buy-in on a mentoring program is if flight schools take it on and see the value in it. Otherwise, those individual CFIs aren't going to want to do it. Now, the older CFIs, the ones who are going to stay in this business for a long time, they're the first ones to sign up. They're like, yep, that's what we need. That's what I need. Definitely need that, right? Because they know, right? It's not just a temporary thing for them. So that's what's going on. I think we should do that. Okay, the second idea here is the Power Hour is now 2 years old. It's actually 3 years old, and there's 172 episodes. So we just passed 172 with the big roundtable we did. And that roundtable was spectacular. Let's talk about who we had. We had Greg Brown, who wrote Savvy Flight Instructor. We had David St. George, Executive Director of SAFE. Dorothy Schick, who's been a flight instructor extraordinaire for a long time up from Oregon. And she's runs the CFI study group, the Facebook group. And then a co with her is Rex Scholl, and he's an instructor from Ogden, Utah. And he's also very smart, has a lot of really pointed things. He gets right to the point, right? So we had, and then it was me, right? We have those, oh, that was me, right? So there's that. And it was quite nice, and people really had good comments and things to say about it. And it was one of those things where I was in the Facebook study group last night, Tuesday, which they do, by the way, a Zoom meeting every Tuesday between 4 o'clock and 7 or 4-6 Pacific time. That's 7 to 9 Eastern time, moderated by Dorothy and Rex. And about 30 people show up, approximately that, get your questions answered, present a lesson plan. Some people can do that if they want to and get critiqued. Those are all great things. But anyway, they brought this up. They said, this Saturday thing, that was the Power Hour, they said was a really good thing, and, extending upon that. So I think there's room in there. So what we're going to do, there's room in there to do more of these. And so what I want to do is do these every 2 months as part of our Power Hours, a roundtable. And I'm going to make it 2 hours instead of 1 because I think it's enough time. We went an hour and a half. We went an hour in the full-on show, and we opened up the room for questions and answers, and that kind of went on for a while. And people asked very good things. I thought we just leave it open for like 2 hours, an hour and a half, 2 hours. That's a good time for that. Okay, so you can join that by going to CFIBootcamp.com, and at the very top you'll see a green bar. It says Power Hour, or click onto it, subscribe, and then you're in. Okay. Now people ask, how can I see the other 171 or 72 now? The only way you can do that is if you're on our membership site. So now the trick to that, by the way, there's a gimmick here. Okay, that membership site is $22 a month, and that's what you pay if you go to the website. But if you will wait, go to a power hour, right? And, get registered for that. You'll get a recap of the show. And in there is an offer. And it's an offer for that same thing for $9. And you can see them all. That's the way we do it. Okay, so let's move on past that. Let's see. So we're going to talk about the Redbird migration. It's going to be Saturday, or not Saturday. It's going to be March the 5th and 6th. It's in Houston at the Lone Star Museum. And I'm giving a presentation on the 6th in the afternoon, late afternoon, about analog versus digital. And basically, I'm going to make the case that we're done with it, right? By the way, a new AC came out. I'll bring it up here in just a second, tell you about it. It's called electronic flight bags. And it gives guidance on how we should be using that, right? And that's acceptable replacement for paper on a practical test. So it was kind of in words right there, and I was going like, well, this is about time that someone comes out. But also ACs are not regulatory, which there's a blanket statement there that Dorothy kindly pointed out to me. So anyway, there's that. So I want to point you to that AC so we can look at it here. Let me just drag it up here for a second as we talk. I also wanted to, what else did I want to do? I want to go down the road. There's AC 91-78A, 91-78A. It's electronic flight bag. So that's brand new as of just a week ago. Not even like that. I think it came out on the 23rd, and it's effective now. Okay, so look at that. So on the Redbird migration, this is a flight training conference put on by Redbird. It's going to be at the Lone Star Museum near Hobby Airport in Houston. And so my thing is at 3:15, I think it is, or 3:40. I think it's 3:15 on the 6th. And that's just before the dinner. So likely to get a good crowd on that. The dinner is where AOPA gives out the Flight Training Excellence Awards. So that will be on that day. So if you're looking to see who won Best Flight School of the Year, Best CFI in a region, or the Flight Instructor of the Year, you're going to find it out on that day, or the very next day when they publish it all, okay? And also Everett Rochon, the guy who runs certification of airmen in Oklahoma City, will be there as well. I see that he's going to be there, and he'll be talking as well. So we're all going to pressure to get a little bit better date. So we may have some other news, but I'm guessing June. I'm going to say June and see if I get the eyes to go like, huh? It's June? Like that, that's what I'm going to do. Because that's how you get someone. If you say something that you're not supposed to know, you just guess, and they go, he knows, right? Could be, right? So I'm going to try that. Okay. I wanted to tell you another couple things too. So the other thing was we're releasing a product. It's coming out in beta next week. And it's called so let me tell you the history. It's called CFI SmartStudy Pro system. Okay, and what it's designed to do is two things. One is the pain point in our business is the ground portion. It's the aeronautical knowledge, and how do I study for it? Many people think that CFI training is self-study. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of self-study in it. But this is a rating which you must receive ground instruction. There's no home study course that can do it. It's by regulation. So all the other things you did, private, commercial, instrument, all had a provision to either get the ground training for these certain things or take a home study course. The CFI is not like that. So you must receive ground instruction along certain elements in the fundamentals of instructing. Then also all the aeronautical knowledge for recreational, private, and commercial certificates are required to be given to you by an authorized instructor. There's no amount of self-study, right? So then what we get into is like, well, here I'm doing all this study. I'm not going to Mike's CFI Bootcamp. I'm not going to any other one, right? I'm going to try to do it all on my own to save a nickel. By the way, that'll cost you money. Every month you're not a CFI, you're losing seniority. Every single month you're going down the peg. And every single month you're not a CFI, you're not gaining the higher income that you're going to get by having been a CFI 3 months, 1 year early. Think if you take a year to do this. If you take a year, how much money you're losing at the end of your career. If you're going to go on and work for 777, you're going to fly 777 the very last years of your career, you're losing an enormous amount of money, right, by not being in that airline now. Okay, so just put this temporary expense out of the way and say this doesn't matter, right, because it doesn't. So it matters now, but scrape up the money, beg, steal, borrow, whatever you have to do it, and do it quickly. Okay, well, now let's move on. So this study thing. So let's say you can't do that. Let's say that's just not possible. Okay, great. Or you take our course, you take anybody else, and you say, okay, I need to study now, but I'm not sure exactly what and how to study. Well, I solved that for you. So with this new product. So what it does, it takes every single area of operation and task in the current flight instructor PTS, and it provides an audio file that's between 10 and 30 some minutes long for you to listen to. And that you can do on your way to the airport, on the way back to the airport, wherever you're going, right? You don't have to have anything in front of you. And it summarizes that area of operation. Even the technical things like principles of flight is summarized there. And then there's a companion PDF for every single one of those audio files that has images from the relevant handbooks. It has summaries. It has some crib notes sometimes. It'll have something in there that's valuable to support that lesson, right? And then integrated with that is our product called the CFI PTS Laser Focus Guide. And that existed already. And what that does is that says it takes every area, again, in that PTS, every element, and says this is where the resources, FAA resources are for that. It's chapter this of this page number, this chapter, this book. Here's the FAR reference. Here's an AC reference. Whatever that is, it's going to have the references there and will tell you specifically what to read. It will say, read that. So the combination of these three things makes for a very powerful way to study. In addition to that, I also have a sequence for you to study. And the sequence I'll just tell you now. That's free to you, okay? So the sequence is study the stuff you know first. The stuff you've already been tested on, the stuff that's kind of like you use in flying, do that first. So night operations, you can do cross-country flight planning, you can do weather, you can do all the stuff that you've been, aeromedical, all the stuff you've been tested on before. Because the issue, if you don't do it that way, here's what happens. You start studying for the FOI, right? And then you say, okay, I think I'm doing this. Okay, I got to do aerodynamics now. Okay, aerodynamics. Then I got to do night. And then go, oh, I forgot the FOI. I got to go study the FOI again. That's like continuous, like a hamster wheel that you can't get off of. So if you keep the FOI and that stuff for later, then it'll be fresh in your head. You're not going to have to restudy it all the time. So do that stuff last. You can do a little bit of it for overview ahead of time. Like I say, you could use our stuff, this new product I'm working on, and do that. That's okay, but don't put all this stuff to memory and start really engaging in that until you're a little ways away. Now, some people would argue here a little bit. They would say, well, you know, the FOI is important to understand so you can teach. And I believe that. But I believe it's so dense, the material is so dense, that I would be able to explain to you what you need out of the fundamentals of instructing. In fact, I wrote a book about it called the Aviation Instructor Handbook Field Guide. And it says how to use each chapter, what's interesting and useful in each chapter and how to use it. So I think those are the things you need first. Then the rest of it can come. So that stuff comes last, okay? So anyway, that's that product. It's not going to be ready for a while. I sort of want to prime the pump and let you know that it's there. And if you're, it's the price point is somewhere around $200, I think. It's around there. My guess is we haven't really set a price for it, but that's what I think it's going to be. Okay, so that's coming out soon. We already have our beta testers, so we don't need any more. We got 5 of them, and that'll start going on. So anyway, all the audio is done. Actually, we did video, but we're not going to publish it as video. Publish as audio so we can get out faster, and you don't need it. And then the PDFs are all done, so it's just a matter of and the other book, the PTS Laser Focus Guide, has already been finished. So we're kind of ready to roll on that. So soon enough. Okay, let's talk about the last things here, which is going to be we talked about migration and talked about that. Now I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Las Vegas. So if you're planning to come see us for a CFI class and you want to come to Las Vegas, that class is filling up. And that's the place where we teach under the Part 141 certificate there, under Chenault. And they can accept VA benefits. So if you go through them, you can fly there and you can do the ground portion all under VA program. And then Liberty University had a little issue with their VA funding. And so there's a lot of people, a lot of the Air Force people and other people and the Liberty program there. So actually not Air Force people, but the other people in Liberty. So when that gets turned back on, they're going to dump a bunch of people into that class. So it could be 4, it could be 8. The class can only hold 10. The classroom can only hold 10. That's it. After that, you got to be remote. And after we have about 14, we can't take any more than that anyway, because there's not enough personal time to spend with you. So we got to make sure you can do the job, right? All right. Now I'm going to give you some of these pro tips. These are going to be pretty cool for you. So, you ready? And this is another bit of advice I've got. So when you're, for new CFIs, when you're in training, when you're teaching a lesson from a lesson plan, have 3 different versions of that lesson plan. have a full-on, I'm going to teach it right as it is out of this pretty dense lesson plan that you would give to someone maybe who didn't take a ground school on something, like maybe it's an aerodynamics or a steep turns lesson plan. They have no idea the aerodynamics behind it, so you'd have to spend a bit of time. The other lesson we want is a 5-minute version of that. So the 5-minute version is going to be, the 5-minute version will take care of people like, for example, who come in for a flight review. Someone like that. So someone who already has done this before, but they need kind of a recap with a little bit more in it there, right? And then the last one is have a 1-minute version. And the 1-minute version is for basically someone who's going to take a flight test in the next few days. Maybe you're doing end of course, a stage check or something, and you'd expect them to be able to do everything. So you just want to give a quick outline of what we're going to do. We're going to do a steep turn, and we're going to do it at this speed. It's not a very lengthy lesson. And I think that's great because then you're ready to go for whatever DP gives you. I think you're in good shape for it. So that's number one. Number two, this is a CFI Bootcamp thing we've implemented for, I don't know how long. It's about PowerPoint. So let me explain. We had a fundamental shift in the way that we use slide decks in PowerPoint. And it had to do with a particular person who had a presentation called How to Avoid Death by PowerPoint, David Phillips. And we've changed everything to align to his way of thinking, and it's made a big difference for us, and I think it will for you too. So let me explain what it is. When you're designing up a slide deck, only have one message per slide, just one. Anything more, no good. And don't have anything more than 6 objects on any given slide. There's some psychology behind that. And don't have sentences on your PowerPoints. If you have sentences, and you have lots of text, let me tell you what happens. The students will read that while you're talking. And if there's something interesting, the third point down, you're talking about the first point, they'll read the third point while you're talking and they won't hear you. Or they'll hear very little of what you have to say. So you really have to constrain what they see. Don't ever hand a lesson plan to a student and say, here, follow along with me. No, because they're just going to read various pieces. Then they'll wonder, they'll have questions in their head. You want them to concentrate on you. Why? Because you're the presentation. Don't forget that. You are the presentation. That's just a visual aid for you, the PowerPoint thing. The other thing I want you to do then is in these 6 items that come up is don't bring them up all at once. Bring them up one item. After you said it, you say this, or it's a prompt to you. Here, put it up, talk about it, put up the next one, talk about it, put up the next one, talk about it. If you're using a whiteboard, develop the whiteboard in stages. Don't put everything on a whiteboard and before the student comes in. They're just going to look at it like a piece of artwork going like, I wonder what the texture of the red pen is if he got that from, that's what they'll do. They'll start thinking like that. Or what does that mean? I wonder what is going to talk about that. Why are you talking about something else? So the other thing we do is if you look at our stuff, if you ever come to one of our CFI Bootcamps, you'll see that the title of the slide, whatever it is small, very small. And the content is big because in all the PowerPoint templates, the title is the biggest thing, but it's rarely the thing that's most important. How many times do you concentrate on just what the title is and the content is in the rest of it, which is usually smaller. So we just flip that around. Okay, so there's that. And then everything else, if you need more things, that goes in your speaker notes. And then people would say, well, the reason I make all these sentences on my PowerPoints is because after the lesson, I'm going to give it to the student. That's fine. Don't do that. Give it to the student, but give them exactly as I said, 6 items per slide, short bits, sweet bits of text to prompt you to say the right thing, and then give them that PowerPoint plus the speaker notes, which will have all your sentences on it, okay? Do that, and I think you'll have a better result. Another short tip there before we leave, we've got about a minute or 2 left, is when people take notes in a class, if they're taking notes while you're talking, they're not listening to you. They're concentrating on what they just heard, not what you're saying. So if you see people taking notes in a class, you need to slow down, stop, say something funny, say something other than the very next important thing you're going to say. Because people cannot usually take notes and then concentrate on something new. All right, the whole reason they're taking notes is to solidify what they just heard onto a piece of paper, which makes another neural path in their brain. Right? So if they're taking notes while you're talking, be sure that you stop or you don't continue doing that. In fact, I encourage people not to take a lot of notes if you don't have to. So, but it's up to you, but that's just it. All right. So the third thing is make sure that the student is out of the psychomotor domain when they're trying to do a particular maneuver. So let me explain what that is. There's three domains of learning, right? The first one is cognitive. That's where you're thinking about things. Like right now, you think, oh, I wonder what he means by that, right? The second is the affective domain. That's how do I feel about this? Like, is it scary to me? Is what you're telling me scary? Is what you're telling me really this looks really exciting? I don't like it. What is it, right? And then the third one is psychomotor. That's the doing domain. Okay, so when a student is learning a maneuver, practicing a maneuver, it's their first times, what's going to happen is they're going to be consumed with doing the task. And when they're consumed with doing the task, they can't hear you, or they don't want to hear you because they're consumed with doing the task. So what you have to do in order to help them, if you need to explain something to them, it's okay to say something like, check your altitude, check your heading, check the bank angle, whatever it might be, right? But it's not okay to say the reason you're losing altitude is because the vertical component of lift is lowering because you're diverting lift towards a turn. That's centripetal force, the horizontal. They're not hearing that. So you have to put them back in the cognitive domain and say, look, I have control, you have control, and then explain to them. And then give them back control, right? Or if they're afraid of something, the affective domain, then take control, explain something, show something, and put them back then eventually into the psychomotor domain. All right, well, that's all I got for you this week. 31 minutes, a little bit over, but that's okay. We're going to have a interesting Redbird migration, and we've got a CFI class coming up on the 11th of March, and a double I class starting on the 19th. So there's still one slot left in the CFI class for March if you want to snag it. If you want the double I class, there's 2 slots open, and that's on the 19th. These are remote. Now, if you happen to be in Palo Alto, the classroom will be open. Our classroom there in the Bay Area will be open for you to go into. We live stream into the classroom. But the other locations, Las Vegas and Miami, you wouldn't be able to go into the classrooms there. All right, and the 19th is, on the double I class on the 19th is strictly remote. Although the classroom will, that's not true. The classroom will be open. Okay, that's all I got for you. So thanks for listening to another exciting episode, the February 2024 edition of Flight Training the Way I See It.